Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting of Children's Services Education and Skills Committee. Welcome to councillors, to officers, to members of the press. There's no one in the gallery, so public online, welcome as well. Firstly, on the agenda, apologies and substitutions. So I'm grateful to substitutions that are here this evening. So Councillor Gavin is filling in for Councillor McLean. Councillor Lever is filling in for Councillor Andre. Sarah Redlock, thanks for getting here on time. I know you've had issues getting here today to fill in for Councillor Lee, my vice chairman, who's apologised. So apologies from Councillor McLean. Right. Okay. Councillor Churchman is here. That is a bit of a mistake by the chairman. I thought that Councillor Mosdale had apologised for tonight's meeting. Councillor Mosdale hasn't apologised for tonight's meeting, as you can see. So I invited Vanessa to come along to tonight's meeting anyway, to substitute for Claire. So as is my gift, I will allow Vanessa to be here. Thank you for coming, Vanessa, to take part in all the discussions. Obviously, you can't vote this evening because of my mistake around Councillor Mosdale. You can't vote on any of the papers, but you can have you can take part in all the, there's no key votes this evening anyway. It's mostly for noting some of the reports. But I felt because of your knowledge of fostering and adoption, and you've been through the reports anyway at Corporate Parenting Board, it's absolutely right that you're here this evening. So thank you to the substitutes for coming. One thing I need to start off by saying is that I'm conscious Councillor McLean has not been to our first three meetings. And it really does concern me because our first three meetings, we've shared a lot of background information around the portfolio, because going forward, we have some real key decisions to make. And I'm just wary that without the knowledge that we've all picked up from our first three meetings, it may be a problem. So I intend just to email Councillor McLean after tonight's meeting, asking him to consider his position on this committee. Because I really feel that without the information we've all shared from our three meetings, decision making will be hard going forward. So I just want to seek his intentions, because it's going to be a real problem for us come the next meeting when we start making key decisions. So if committee are happy, that's what I intend to do. Councillor Glavin.
Could I just say that it's probably likely that I will be taking over from David because of my interest in the committee. So that's really what's going to happen. Thank you.
Yeah, no. Go on, Carl. Yes, Carl.
I think that legal will confirm. I think it needs to be confirmed at full council before that happens. So that's important that you raise that at full council on the agenda. And yes, I agree that there are some extremely difficult and complex matters which need to be resolved moving forward for this committee, and therefore as much training and as much knowledge as possible needs to be brought into this meeting to make those decisions. And also it's not fair to the ward which he represents not to be represented at meetings like this.
Yeah, thank you. I think I will send that email because I need to. I think it's my duty as chair, not politically, but we got some decisions. I need to send that email formally on behalf of the committee. I also thinking about tabling a member's question to full council about general. We are effectively 9 cabinet members. We're all 1/9 of a cabinet member. We are all effectively cabinet members. We're a decision-making body. So I know it's a concern of myself and other chairs I've spoken to and the leader. So I'm thinking about tabling a question for full council to make the point that all councillors are now a decision-making body. So if the members are happy, I will send that email. But thank you for the update. And if that change does happen, officers will gladly bring you up to speed on what has been said so far. Thank you. Okay. Next item is the minutes of the meeting on the 26th of June. Do I have any comments on the meetings of the 26th of June? I wish that some weren't here. Okay, kind of a proposal for the minutes. Councillor Hendricks, Councillor Love seconds. All those in favour of the minutes being signed? Anyone against or abstaining if you weren't here? Yeah, thank you. I'll just sign those off. 6 pages of it. Item 3, are there any declarations of interest from members that aren't already declared on your council declaration of interest documents? Councillor Love.
I'm a governor at St George's School recently on that, so I need to declare that for the meeting.
I think most of the committee actually are, or should be at least, school governors. So that's it's on your declaration of interest anyway.
No, it wouldn't be because I'm a new, so my declaration of interest will need altering to that effect. But I'm a new governor to that board, so that's why I'm declaring.
And thank you for taking on that role. It's a thankless task being a school governor, but I'm sure you'll be. Yeah, thank you, Carl.
Chairman, I don't.
She should. Thank you. I'm sure Academy. I'm sure if they know you're available, Councillor Wood, I'm sure they'll take up your offer one day to be a school governor, because getting school governors is a very, very, very hard task to do. Not many people want to do it, but even though it is rewarding, Councillor Love, you'll enjoy it. Thank you. So item 4, public questions. We've had no written public questions. There's no one in the gallery. An interesting point, actually, I'll just raise at this point. It says public can ask oral questions under the new constitution. That is not correct, and it will be adjusted for our next meeting, because there is no scope on the new constitution for members of the public to ask oral questions. Councillor Mosdale may be aware of that, may not be. I only found out this afternoon. It's at the gift of the chair, but there is no constitutional right for oral questions from members of the public as it stands on the constitution. Councillor Love.
Thank you for clarifying that. However, that is not in the best interest of the general public and the island people, in my view. Therefore, I would seek to recommend from this committee, if people are in agreement, that be brought to full council, and that matter be raised within the review of the constitution, which is 6 months. Is that possible?
It will be, and it is within the gift of the chair. Personally, if there was a member of the public, I would happily allow them to ask oral questions. It's within the gift of the chair. I know Councillor Mosdale would also allow that. The other chairs are happy to allow the questions. Constitutionally, that is what it says. It will need to be reviewed in the constitution, yes, and we will recommend it.
Just for clarity, may I ask the legal officer just to clarify that for the record?
You
but
may.
Also, my recommendation from this committee, if people were to support that, is that we write and ask for that to be reconsidered, I think is the word, in the review.
Yeah,
that's what I would like this committee to support, if that's possible.
Mr. Thorne.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can confirm it's part of the 6-month review. For clarity, this is talking about oral questions. So those are questions without notice. Remember, the public does have the right currently to ask a written question. This is just about turning up at the front reception, recording their question, and then having the constitutional right to put that question at the meeting. And I think it's just purely an omission when we transferred over to the new constitution.
The reason I ask that question, Chair, is because not everybody is good with the written word, and that equality and diversity and inclusion should allow people to ask a verbal question, which is the norm, isn't it? So that's why I'm asking it, because I believe that could breach the Equality Act, but not. But anyway, we've sorted that one out.
Absolutely. I'm on form this evening, aren't I? Fire procedure for the council chamber, which I should have started with 9 minutes ago. Apologies. No one's picked me up on it, which is interesting. In the case of an emergency, there are no planned fire drills during this meeting. If you hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. Nearest escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or the public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building, walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts can't be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it's safe to do so by a member of staff. I apologise for missing that at the beginning. Okay, item 5, members' questions. I have no written questions from members. Are there any verbal questions at this stage that members wish to ask? Councillor Love.
Not quite sure it's a question. I would like this committee to consider writing to the Integrated Care Board about commissioning services, particularly for speech and language issues, because currently there seems to be a great big gap in that provision, and the only way of accessing that is if you have a care plan. And therefore, I would like to, not quite sure, to ask this committee again if they would write to the Integrated Care Board to ask them when they're going to commission this service, which is integral to school education, particularly children with SND.
Thank you. Is that a question for the Health and Wellbeing Board, or is that a question, rhetorical question, or is that a question for our committee to do? Okay.
I think it's actually a question for both. I think it's relevant here because obviously we're children's services, so we're looking at education, inclusion and access. So the children that Councillor Love's just referenced are those children with special educational needs and disabilities who require education healthcare plans. So it would be relevant to those children, but also through the Health and Wellbeing Board because it's a specific area of need in regards to health matters. So I think it could be relevant to this board in order to raise those issues. Just on that point, it may be later that when we discuss the adoption report that's on the agenda for this evening, that we talk about other matters regarding the Integrated Care Board. So it may be that we could combine some of those matters if we discuss that maybe later again.
I'm happy with that. It's just that this is now a critical element moving forward to September where we don't have any speech and language. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's a very well made point. If we're going to talk about the ICB under adoption later, we could combine, we could take that as an action later on. I 100% endorse what you're saying. Right there. So any members' questions before we move on? Okay. Item 6, this is our decision and update section. 6A is the regular service performance and improvement Q1 that we asked for. This is Ashley's report. Ashley Whittaker's, he's signing himself somewhere. So Kay will present Ashley's report. If we let Kay present the report, then we'll take questions at the end rather than interrupt. We hear the presentation in full, then we'll now time for questions after that if everyone's happy. Okay, Kay, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So it's my intention to take you through the headlines through the report that Ashley's prepared. In regards to questions at the end, just to say if I can't answer any specific questions regarding education, inclusion and access, then I can take away any questions to get a further submission from Naomi and Ashley when they return from annual leave. So as we've just heard, the report that you have in front of you relates to Q3 in regards to our corporate plan of activities and priorities, but also our key performance indicators. So that takes us from April to June, that period. So that you'll know that since our partnership ended with our Hampshire colleagues in January 2024, the Directorate has 3 areas of focus, which is relevant to what we'll be discussing tonight in regards to progress. So those 3 specific areas are to maintain safe and stable services. Priority number 2 is about setting up the new Directorate, of which we have made great progress, but there's still quite a lot more for us to do. And then for number 3, the priority is about delivering upon our improvement and transformation agenda. And we'll hear a little bit more about that as I take you through the headlines of the report when we look at each area within the Directorate. So as of November 2021, full council approved the corporate plan, of which the vision and the strategic priorities were agreed at that point. So just moving into the headlines of the report, In common with the national picture, what we do know is that the needs of children on the island are complex, and they're increasing in complexity, and they remain high in regards to demand on services. So in regards to that, there's two key impacts in regards to the number of children's needs with complexity increasing, but also the impact that that has upon workloads for our officers within the local authority. So as of the end of June, I'll talk you through, first of all, for education, inclusion and access, the key highlights that Ashley wanted me to share with you all as a committee. So there were 1,844 children in the local authority with special educational needs and disabilities, whereby they are supported through an education healthcare plan. We saw in the summer of 24-25 that there were 96 requests for new education healthcare plans. That's lower than the previous term through the spring term, when that was 156 at that point. Where we have seen some improvements in the service, because their specific area of focus and targeted intervention, is that we'll see that those issued within the 20-week time frame has improved. So most recently, that's been at 13.6%. So whilst we've still got a long way to go in regards to that timeliness, it is an improvement upon the spring term when it was 4.9%. So you can see, hopefully, that the trajectory is improving. Some of the key issues in there is regarding the high demand that we have on the island. As you know, we are outliers when we compare to national and also regionally. And some of the areas of difficulty that we have is delays in the capacity of partners to complete. So those assessments, so the education healthcare plan, as you'll know, requires educational psychology, education colleagues, health, and also children's social care. So I'll move us on into children's social care and some of the key headlines that Ashley has pointed out for us there. So what you will see is regards to contacts into the service. So there has been a reduction, and we did have some conversation in regards to our new multi-agency safeguarding hub when we last met at committee, and we talked about how we seek some assurance there. So from Q4 to Q1, there's been a reduction from 3,610 contacts to 2,356. The reason for that is, since we've introduced our own island multi-agency safeguarding hub, how we count contacts into that service has changed. So whereas all contacts previously, all contacts into our Hampshire multi-agency safeguarding hub would be counted. So what we do now is we count any contacts into the service where that's a contact that's specific about a child, or whether it's a request for a service in relation to a child. That's the same as other local authorities nationally, so that's how we count. In addition to that, if there are multiple contacts relating to the same issue, those are coordinated so that that counts as one contact. And also what we've done is we've separated out how we count contact. So if it's a contact about a child that's not open to our service, that's counted differently to a child who's already receiving support through statutory intervention. So that's why we've seen that reduction in the number of contacts into the service. In regards to children in need, you will see that from Q4 to Q1, there has been a slight reduction in the number who are receiving child in need support services, and that's a reduction from 1,233 to 1,190. There's various reasons for that. So children who receive child in need support, they may be open to our children with disability service, support and protection service. Some of those children may be supported through our cared for services. So that will be children who are going through the process to return home, where we've got discharge, but they still require support from us to make sure that there's stability created. But what we have done with the implementation of our new multi-agency safeguarding hub is we've also analysed to make sure we've got the right threshold application throughout children's social care system. So that's led to some children no longer requiring a service. So making sure that we've got the right children in the right service at the right time. And also, when I talk to you about the reduction in contacts then convert into referral and then convert into assessment. There's also been a reduction there, which means that there are less children requiring child in need support in the service. So that's some of the reasons that we've seen there. In regards to our children looked after, there's been a slight reduction from Q2 to Q1 of 2 children. It varies and it will vary on each quarter, but what we do anticipate is a further reduction of the number who are receiving services and support as looked after children, because what we're doing, and Mark is here with us tonight, our corporate parenting service manager, we're leading on some work where we're reviewing our children looked after's arrangement. So if it's safe and appropriate for children to return home, then we're supporting them to do that. But also we're looking at our permanence arrangements to make sure that children achieve legal permanence where possible. So, for example, through special guardianship orders. So there will be a gradual reduction as we move forward. Ashley also highlights in his report that we have during this quarter successfully implemented our new case management system that is Mosaic, which we're really proud about. You'll know that this has been a journey of some years for quite a long time for the local authority. So we're really pleased that we've achieved that. It's gone quite smoothly, albeit we've still got a long way to go in regards to making sure that the development of that system meets our practice model and needs going forward. But we're really pleased that we've been able to succeed with that, particularly whilst there've been 2 other case management systems that we've implemented quite recently also. There's a finance element in the section on page 13 that no doubt you will have seen and read. The pressures that we have in regards to finance across children's services predominantly relates to our homes for children. As I referred to earlier, there's an increase in complexity of need for our children experiencing complex lives. Consequential of that, and again, in line with the national picture, there's a shortage of the right homes for our children, finding the right homes in the right place at the right time. And consequently, that often leads to increased costs to provide for children in the right homes given their additional needs. And certainly that's a pressure that we have on the island currently. You'll also be aware of other pressures that we have, particularly around recruitment of qualified social workers within our support and protection service. Whilst we have reduced the number of agency social workers that support us in providing our statutory services, we still have a long way to go in regards to recruitment and retention. So of course that does bring with it additional financial pressures. We do report on a underspend within our youth justice service, albeit that's an underspend in Q1 only, and that relates to that we haven't had any children or young people requiring a home for remand during that quarter. So some of the other challenges that we have, and again, it relates to our children with special educational needs and disabilities, is the recruitment in education psychology. You'll recall at the last committee that Naomi and colleagues took you through in some detail around those challenges and what our interim arrangements are. But those are still pressures for us in recruiting educational psychology experts and specialists to the island. And then the other ongoing pressure for us is around homeschool transport. We have a contract that we're in the process of confirming, but that will add to it some financial pressures. So you will see at the moment in children's social care, there's a forecasted overspend of 1.79 million, and across children's services in its entirety, that's forecast at 1.92 currently in Q1. I'm just going to speak to my colleague, Irina. Is there anything that you wish to add in that regard? Okay. Have I said it correctly? Thank you. Okay, so I'll talk to you now about the key priorities for us as a directorate. I'll take you first through education, inclusion and access, and then children's social care, and then across the directorate, the priorities that we are working on and have been through Q1. We're going through a significant change agenda. That's for the entirety of the directorate, so in children's social care, which I'll refer to shortly, and also education, inclusion and access. So what we need to be very minded to and assured is that that doesn't compromise on us still being able to deliver safe and stable services. So taking us back to the beginning of Ashley's report, one of our priorities is making sure that business as usual maintains those safe and stable services. So that remains a focus for us. You'll be aware that the education strategy was approved by Cabinet in April 25, a strategy that we're very proud of. There's been a lot of work across many agencies in shaping the education strategy. So the next priority for us is looking at the detailed action plans so that we can implement the priorities within that strategy. So that's the work that we're focusing on currently. When I say we, it's the royal we, because we are one service. One of the second priorities that we're working on is for our special educational needs and disabilities. You might question, why is that separate? Because it's actually a pillar within the strategy. But what we are aware of, that there are specific improvements and transformations that need to take place in that area of activity. One of the priorities for us is actually working with partners within health and social care, because what we know is the special educational needs provision is not just about our education, inclusion and access colleagues, it's that wider partnership work. So based on the local area SEND evaluation that took place in April, which was aligned with the inspection framework, we're now delivering, or developing, I should say, the multi-agency transformation plan. So that's where we're working currently, so that we can make sure that across the partnership, we all have an understanding of what those priorities are, and we'll have a detailed structured plan of how we deliver them and within what timeframes. And then the final priority for our education, inclusion and access colleagues that I'll share with you today is, of course, where we've had many conversations at committee and previously at children's scrutiny and within Cabinet, and that's about a sustainable education infrastructure. You'll know that we've got consensus that further changes are required to the number of primary schools on the island, and that's relative to the number of children that are currently attending school and also future forecasts. So there is, having gone through the request from the last committee, there will be a paper coming to the next committee in October, which is an options paper for all of you to think about and consider. But what Ashley does highlight is about the financial challenges within the current picture of our school structure. So during the financial year of 2024 and 25, 19 of our 33 primary schools had spent more money than they had received. So overall, 33 schools spent 0.93 of a million more than they'd actually received in that financial year. 9 of those schools, 9 of those 33 schools were in debt, and that is 0.86 million. So it's really important that we think about this in the context of those financial challenges, not only about forecasting for the future for our primary schools, and actually we'll need to think about our secondary provision also as we do move forward. But what we know is that those maintained schools, when they close any debt that's been accrued, then that is inherited by the local authority into our general fund. I'll move us on to children's social care. and our priorities there. So we're working in our world of corporate parenting at the moment, and you'll know that we're shaping our sufficiency strategy, where there'll be a number of work streams that fall out of that. So there's a specific focus for us about how we develop the services around our children looked after and care experience young people. You'll know that we had it approved that our care experience young people and cared for children are now a protected characteristic, which is really positive for us as corporate parenting. And that's actually helping us shape our participation agenda. So we are doing some work within corporate parenting services around how we collect the voice of our children and young people, and that's in two aspects. So at the moment, Mark and colleagues in Mark's service are looking at how we develop our corporate parenting strategy, making sure that children and young people shape the voice and the priorities for us, but also how they can support us in shaping our corporate parenting board. So we're really excited about some of the opportunities we have there. Another area for us, as I've already referred to when I talked about the financial picture, is our Homes for Children. Again, it's a national challenge, and so our local context is no different to that national context, but it's really important that we do know in the room that we do have a shortage of the right homes for the right children at the right time on the island. So the development of that strategy is going to be really critical and an area of priority for us over the next well, probably over the next 6 to 12 months specifically. We'll do targeted work in that area. And then the other specific area relates to the level of change that I talked to you about and referred to, and that relates to the social care reform. So there's a significant change agenda that's national. It's also through our statutory responsibilities. So what we're having to do is review with all of our statutory partners, including education colleagues across the island system, how those social care reforms will impact us, about how we shape and develop future services. So we're looking at how we map that at the moment and work with our statutory partners, but also community and voluntary sector colleagues to help us look at how we deliver that. Because what we want to do is make sure that any changes that we make are made in an island context, and that they're future proof, so that we make the right decisions for children. I am nearing the end. So the overall priorities for us as a directorate, and this is across the service, the priorities that we are working for are around early identification, intervention and prevention. So what we do know is that identifying need for children and families at the earliest point is the best for children. It achieves the best impact and outcome, reduces the reliance or the demand on statutory services and intervention, which can be intrusive for families. So we want to prevent that wherever possible. And of course, that results in lower public purse expenditure over time. So that's our priority around that early identification and intervention, prevention, and certainly the social work reforms that we're reviewing to help us shape our services going forward will have that key priority focus. Other areas is contextualised safeguarding, so risk outside of the family home. We know that the island has a different context to perhaps some of local authorities on the mainland, but nonetheless, it's a real area of focus and consideration for us, because there are increasing needs around complexity that children face outside of the family home. We're really pleased that we have a new strategic lead for contextualised safeguarding within children's social care, who's also supported by a lead social worker. There was an absence of that for us when we became a new children's services on the island. So it's been a real focus for us. And those two colleagues are embedded within our multi-agency safeguarding hub, so we can make decisions around early intervention prevention at the earliest point. So we're really pleased about that work and the development that's taking place in that area. And another directorate focus for us is around children not attending school. Again, we have a high number of children who are not in school for a variety of reasons. They may be on roll, they may have an education healthcare plan, but not attending. So for all of us in children's social care, education, inclusion and access. It's a real priority. So we're looking at how we can use data across the system intelligently to map who those children are. So for example, it may be that our children in need receiving statutory support are also the same children known to our Youth Justice Service, our children known to our Special Educational Needs Department. So we're looking at mapping that so that we can coordinate response to support those children moving forward. Finally, the last headline that I wanted to share with you is in relation to budgets, and we will see that we've had corporate support in regards to our budget strategy for 2025 and 2026, whereby children's services have been able to receive an extra 4.1 million into the budget. This is to address existing pressures. Some of those I've just talked to you about, and some of them are around improvement and development alongside those social work reforms. So there will be an element of that to support increased staffing needs that we've identified both strategically, but also within statutory roles that are absent currently. It'll help us to formulate a plan around the social work reforms and how we deliver upon that. But also there'll be additional funding for some of those primary targeted challenging areas that we have. The homes for children that I've talked to you about, homeschool transport, for example. And then what Ashley wanted to assure you all of as a committee, that those financial pressures and budget alignments moving forward will have robust monitoring processes in place where there are monthly meetings across the system, but also we're then able to forecast any highlighted emerging risks or pressures going forward. So I'll pause there, and if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them if I can answer them.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of quick points from me, actually. I think a lot of this information, obviously, we discussed at our informal meeting, whenever it was, last month or so, and it's useful to have those conversations on the background data. But, you know, hope this gives you a flavour of the amount of work that's going on within the directorate at the moment is massive. You know, for a team that is still new and still forming itself, and still got large recruitment issues that I'm sure will come up in a second. There's a phenomenal amount of work going on, and it is a case of, you know, it will all move forward. It's a case of which bit you move forward first. So thank you to everyone for the work they're doing in the team, because you can see from this there's so much going on. The budget chats are also starting to happen, and I can assure you that Section 151 officer won't get an easy ride from us regarding our needs for funds and recruitment, and you know, because we've got to push our case to get further funding that we need to deliver the services we want to deliver. And what one just seed of thought for October, really, but when you read that the 33 primary schools lost 0.93 million last year, and 9 of those schools are £860,000 in deficit, you've got to remember that any closed school, the money is picked up by the Isle of Wight Council. If any school goes bust or says they can't survive anymore on the finances, the council picks that up. I won't share with you the figure that we're picking up from Councillor Fuller may know that, but it's a sizable chunk of money that we're picking up from closing cows that comes into our budget. So when I say, you know, 4 years of dithering has got to stop, as a committee, we have got some serious decisions to make in October. You know, it's just a couple of snippets to bear in mind when we meet there. I'm sure it'll be on the paper anyway. So, questions? Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. I know on my time on the previous scrutiny iteration of this, it's on.
Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Sorry.
Yeah, I know on my previously I was on the scrutiny iteration of this committee. I remember a meeting and we were talking about a focus on trying to bring down suspensions in schools because it was seen as not the ideal outcome to be happening. However, across primary, secondary and special, there's an increase in suspensions, particularly in secondary, a 26.90% suspension rate at the moment. What's going on there? What's not working?
When I looked at this data, the thing that stood out to me was not so much the primaries. Being a primary governor, I know primaries sort of try and nurture their children, but the secondary school suspensions is horrendous. But I don't know whether Kay's got any more to add to that or whether we get a detailed answer from Ashley, but you're right, that figure stands out like a sore thumb.
So thank you for the question. I am aware there's a lot of work taking place in Rachel's area of education, inclusion and access with our schools. However, I don't want to get wrong what is happening. So if it's okay, I'll take that back as a question, and Ashley and Naomi return next week, so we'll get you a written response.
Thank you, Councillor Lever. Oh, Councillor Fuller, sorry.
Thank you. I know the figure for Cowes Primary School, and it is a figure that has been increasing year on year. I think governors are encouraged to try to reduce the amount of deficit that they have within their schools. But I think from Cowes' point of view, the balance had tipped. There was no way, and certainly from my point of view, talking to parents, it was very difficult for me to sort of like say, well, this school needs to stay open, because at the end of the day, if you've got a huge deficit, which they had in Cowes, how can you campaign to keep a school open? That was Cowes. Again, the question I was going to raise was exactly the same as Joe, and that is about the suspensions from school. What is a concern to me is that schools might find it easier to suspend children rather than have to pick up the impact that allowing them to go through exams would have. And what some kind of reassurance, Kay, that the suspensions is done as a very, very last resort. Sometimes when you're a governor, it's quite easy to suspend a child from school because they are disruptive and they are not achieving at the levels that they are expected to achieve. And what worries me is that it can be seen as being an easy option. And certainly when you look at the data in front of you, there is that assertion that is a school's not really picking up on the educational needs of those children, and it is too easy to suspend a child. And I really want to have that reassurance here and now, rather than waiting for a letter to come from Ashley when he returns from leave. So I think it's a really important issue, and I think it's an issue that we need to. It is a bit of an elephant in the room for this report, but I think we need to have some kind of reassurance that isn't actually what's happening on the ground. Thank you for bearing with me, Chairman.
I'll happily pick that up. Regarding budgets, it's quite simple really, in so much as a school has to do a 3-year projection. A school can be in deficit for 3 years as long as there's a recovery plan in place. Can be 5 if extended by the director to a 5-year plan. But schools cannot operate on deficit budgets. Some schools on the island, certainly 2 I've been involved with, have done major restructures to try and balance the books, and it's not easy. The role of a school governor, does involve, as most will agree, it does involve some serious budget and restructuring of schools, which can affect the standards. But I think the point that's missed on all this is that schools are only funded per pupil. If you can't magic pupils, so in simple maths, if a class is 10 pupils short in a primary school, effectively it's £45,000 they're not going to get in funding for the whole 7 years. So the school has got to find over a 7-year period £315,000. Maths are quite simple there are obviously other bits of funding as well. And that's where we come back to our October meeting. We can't avoid the issue that lack of pupils does cause pressure on schools, and that will affect standards. You're right. And regarding suspensions, when I first saw the data set, when I took over this role, that did stand out like a sore thumb. And I've had assurances from Naomi and Beth, who's now on board with the school improvement team, that they are working exactly what you said, at our schools suspending some. There will be suspensions, but they've got to be for the right reasons, not because the school's not dealing with that child. That's my view, and that's what I've given to officers, and that they do share. Naomi and Beth do share that view. There's Kay wants to add to that.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. I'm really pleased to have your questions, because As I've said, school attendance is a real priority for us, so the questions are welcomed. In regards to reassurance, the reassurance I will give you is that school attendance is our priority, so that includes in all its forms. So I know that our education inclusion and access colleagues are addressing those children who are educated other than at school, also looking at attendance in its broadest sense and any exclusions, whether they be temporary suspensions or wider. What I don't have is the detail, so I can reassure you that this is being addressed. But what I will do, so we're in the summer holidays at the moment, so what I can be assured of for you is that we'll get a letter of response before we go back to the new school term. So I'll make sure that Ashley and Naomi have these questions and combine an answer for you.
I have read that, and I will promise you we'll get an answer, because that's a question I raised at the very beginning as well. So it's an important one. Thank you. Councillor Mosdale.
Thank you. It's regard to point 8 under operational performance and saying how, you know, the requests for EHCPs and stuff like that. How do you map when a child has got an EHCP and if the school can actually provide the actual support that that EHCP says that that child requires? So it's all very well to have a plan and an EHCP, but if they're in a school that actually doesn't have the capacity to support that child, or, you know, it's very, some of this stuff is really specialised, how are you mapping whether the child has got the EHCP and are they actually getting the support within the school? Because you seem to be doing your bit, but it's the next stage. I'd like to know how that's happening, because you do read on social media, I've got an EHCP, but actually the child is not getting the support that that EHCP says that they need.
You're asking me a lot of education questions, aren't you? That's okay. It's absolutely fine, but I won't be able to answer your question because I don't know that level of detail. But I think it's a really important question, so I will take that away and I will get you a response.
As you know, EHCPs went to a banding system following a fantastic cabinet decision in 2000 and whatever it was. And I know that schools do get questioned on their high needs budget, what they're spending it on. But in answer to your question directly, how can they be sure? That's the question that needs to be answered. You know, I think it varies amongst schools. You know, the schools I'm involved with, absolutely, we know what a high needs budget is spent, and governors, again, comes down to governors again to question the start of the head teachers. And governors play a big part in some of this. The officers can challenge, governors equally are that challenging critical friend in the governing body to the school as well. So
the question is, how is that being mapped? How are they actually having that assurance that these EHCPs and those children are getting the support they require within the school?
What I can say to you is that what is being developed is a pathway. So when there's the early identification of needs across the island, there's a pathway that's being developed so that schools can access the right support at the right time, as can parents. But what I don't know the answer to specifically is how that's being mapped. So it's the specific area about how that is mapped to make sure those schools are meeting those needs. That's what I don't know the answer to. So I will find that out for you.
Councillor Love, next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report to all those who've helped prepare it. Because it's actually a very mixed bag, isn't it, in terms of report. There's lots of really positive things, but there's lots of stuff that needs a lot of work on it. And I'm kind of just slightly puzzled, if I'm really honest, Chair, about the recommendation, because the recommendation to the committee is to note the operational and financial performance of the Children's Service Directorate. Now, the reason that I'm picking that out just at the second is because we are actually a decision-making committee to make decisions, to make recommendations, to support officers, to help direct so as a report, yes, of course, I would note the report itself. It's a good report because it gives us a lot to work out, but it's how we then deal with the elements that are within it. And so, you know, what education, young people are always going to be the first priority. They're always going to be what it's all about, you know, improving outcomes, helping young people thrive, move forward. It's a central thing. But my priority looking at this in terms of, you know, for me, the recommendation here in terms of decisions, everything will improve, I believe, if we can get our staffing issues and our service delivery improved. So the fact that we don't have enough of everything, we'll never have enough of everything, but in some areas we have very, very little. So for me, the priority to improving the outcomes for young people is to support our staffing here, to make sure that our staff are fully supported, that their health and well-being is central. But importantly, that we fill these positions that are vacant, because if there aren't enough officers and workers to deliver improvements, so such as the health and care plans, if we don't have the people in place, we won't improve that, because they'll just fall behind all the time, won't they, in terms of numbers of referrals. So when I say that the recommendations, I feel as though there's loads of stuff we could get our teeth into, and perhaps we should use this annual report as a way of picking off all the elements as we move through. But my priority, I'm not so sure that I'm going to actually vote in favour of the recommendation, because actually I feel that my recommendation is that we do everything in our power and possibility to support staff to improve the staffing for the council in order to move forward and improve the outcomes for young people. Whereas this is just very nondescript. It doesn't support the staff. It just notes what you've said, which is important to be noted, to be valued. I get that. But in actual fact, we should be saying things like, this committee recommends that the priorities should be as are advised by you, but also within that, I would say the priority is our staffing across the whole spectrum of education, because we need to get that right. We need to improve that. And if we sit here and don't make a recommendation to try to focus on that as a priority, then I don't feel that we've actually, what is the point in me being here? Just to note a document. So I'm trying not to be crook, because I note it because it's a good document, but the outcome is the actions that come from it. And we are not sitting here and giving any better forward motion in terms of leading the council. That's the point that I'm making. So, you know, my priority is the priority for young people to improve young people's outcomes is to get our staffing right, and to make that the priority of this council to do whatever it can so that all sections, not just because I know everybody's trying to do a good job. We know what the problems are out there, but if we don't actually find some solutions to that, the outcomes from young people will not improve, because they can't improve because we haven't got the staff to do the jobs. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I'm not trying to be pedantic or difficult. I'm just saying that I don't like the recommendation. I'm not going to note something because I want to see an outcome from the document to support the officers.
Points well made.
Sorry.
No, my understanding and the way I see this is a quarterly report that we are going to receive containing the whole update on the whole directorate. Okay, so we're being asked to note that we've seen the report, we like the format of the report, we've had the opportunity to discuss the report. Within that report, we can come up with specific areas we want to have more operational discussion around. Use the example of recruitment, staffing. We could, within that report, pick out that we would like to have in a future meeting a detailed paper on structure and recruitment. So within the report, we can pick specific areas out, and I'll get prodded if I'm making a mistake. We can pick areas out that we want to deep dive into, make a decision on. But what we're noting that we've received the overall report on the whole directorate. That's the way I see this. Am I?
Chairman, I think that, this is a notum report. It's an overall performance report. I think you're right that you can pull out elements and ask for further papers to be brought to this committee. What you've always got to be mindful of is you're not a committee to make the smaller operational decisions. We're there to provide that strategic overview. So you wouldn't want to be getting down into the recruitment for a particular team.
Can I come back to, so yeah, just following on that, so well, we could, if recruitment and the gaps in the new team are a real concern of ours, we could ask specifically for a paper, a future meeting on where the gaps are in the team and what they're doing about filling those gaps in the team.
See, I wouldn't be asking for that because
As an
we don't.
example of,
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. I do appreciate it. I won't be asking for that. What I'm trying to do is support us pulling out particular things. So I like the idea of saying one of our recommendations is to learn more about recruitment, but what they're doing about it is the important bit, without it being anything like, I don't want a paper like that. They haven't got time for it. That's part of the problem. We're all bogged down. What we need is two sheets saying one side the problem, the other side the solution, so that we can then support that and make that a recommendation. That's kind of, because you're right, we don't need to get into the operation, but the overview, we aren't doing anything if we don't do something.
and that's of course what we did at our informal meeting the other week. We had the opportunity to discuss with the director of, in an informal basis, the challenges. That's why that formal meeting. We could have another informal meeting if you'd like to discuss, the areas of children's services where there's gaps. We can have informal meetings as many as we like to dive into these problems and make the formal decision. So this formal decision is to note receipt of the holistic report.
Just that
I get what you say.
The general public like to know, so they know that we've had an informal meeting, but they don't know we've had an informal meeting about what. And that's the point that I'm making. By having these one-sided 2 sheets of paper that say we're actually doing this, this, and this. If we ask for those things, and I'm asking for that in order to support, not because I don't want this. This must have taken months and hours of work. We don't need that level of, in my view. What we need to do is support you moving forward.
Thank you. I really appreciate the support that you're extending to us as staff and support officers to make the changes that we need to. I welcome that. Thank you. Based on the conversation that we're having, so we've put in there about obviously where some of the pressures are and the additional funds that have been provided through the budget setting, and some of that is to be allocated to staff. So what I'm wondering, and again, this is just based on the suggestions that you're making, is perhaps if I go away and have a conversation with Ashley and Naomi, to look at whether we provide for you a paper in regards to where those staffing, yes, one paper, one side is the issue, the second side the solution, but a short paper just in regards to what those issues are for us in regards to posts across the system and what we're doing, because some of them are key elements, statutory posts that are absent from the system. So we do have plans, so we could share that with you if that would be helpful, Chair.
That would be very helpful. I think Councillor Love's nodding. So, yeah. I've got 5 more people that wish to speak on this, and then we'll move on to the next paper. So, Councillor Gladwin, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chair. I was just interested to read about the Mosaic scheme that went live last month, and I was just wondering what the original system was and what the improvements are. Thank you.
Good question.
A very good question. So my understanding is that the system that we had on the island was in place for over 20 years, and it was called ICS, Integrated Children's System. So it's an electronic database. However, I think just by the reference to over 20 years will indicate that that was significantly outdated. And over most recent years, that system was at the point where it was on its knees in regards to its capabilities and its maintenance, which meant that social workers weren't able to record and report in that system all of the statutory work that we have to undertake. So just for example, visits, assessments, plans, all of those things we weren't able to actually record in the system, which then is an issue because it's about children's electronic records being in one single place, but also reporting mechanisms should be able to come from that system so that we understand whether we're meeting our key performance indicators and so forth. So there had been for most recent years what's called a workaround. So those electronic documents were then supported through a different system where we would keep all of those children's records. And that got to the point where it didn't have the capacity to hold any more information. So we were at a point where our recording systems were near to breaking. So we were in desperate need for a new system. The new system that we've put in place is one that's used by a number of the local authorities. So we know reputationally that it's a good system. Certainly our Hampshire colleagues did a lot of work when they were in partnership with us about looking at which systems would be best for our needs now, but also for future proofing. So Hampshire initially highlighted and identified Mosaic because of the timeframes that we had when we became a new children's services. We recontracted and we continued with that programme. But what we did actually do is pause so that we could make it future proof. So we've made some adaptations so it fits with our current practice model. So all social workers now are able to record in that system all of the work that they undertake when they're working with a child and family, which is very positive. What we also did is we added an element so that we can record financial elements relating to children also. And we also added onto there an element that's called Power BI, which is a system that sits on top of the database that then helps us to report. So some of the information that you will have seen in your pack, those dashboards, that's Power BI. So that enables us to report from systems. So I am really confident that it will be life-changing for us as a system. We're not quite there yet though, because we're at the first stage of that development. Later on this year in September, we need to go through another process of an upgrade. Because of the number of years it's taken us to get to implementation, we're actually at the point where it needs an upgrade. So as of September to January, we'll go through the next upgrade system. And then post-January, we will continue with the development of the system in line with our practice model so that we build further capabilities as well. So I think it will be transformative for us. It already has.
Thank you, Kay. Having signed off Mosaic in 2019, it's good that it's finally come to fruition. So I think it will be. The ICS was a very cumbersome system with records not in one place. But it's all in one place now made rocket sense to me at the time. Councillor Hendry, you're next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kay, for the report. Two things. I could kind of guess that a lot of this was generated by Power BI or some system, which is great. So some things which we could do to improve things, where we have, for example, the number of attendance, stuff like that, if we could include the national average on that page there, because at the moment you can go and look through the data and find it, and that's brilliant. But having that right at the beginning for people who don't work in it every day would be brilliant. And probably unlike Councillor, I want to get more into data. And what would be useful if we could get access to those Power BI reports and be able to drill down. So, for example, we talk about suspensions. And for me, what would be useful to see, is it only certain schools which are causing a high percentage of those suspensions, or is it spread across? Is it certain year groups which are doing it? And when we get onto school-based planning later in the year, having access to more data electronically, which we can drill down on, would be very useful, rather than maybe printing it all out and looking at. So just some things to note going forward from my point. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hendry. Just to say that the database, the dashboards that you've had sight of today is a work in progress. So our colleague Emma Bruce has put in considerable work into these dashboards, but she's still supporting us to develop them. So they're not final version yet. So for example, certainly when it comes to the children's social care pages and elements that you have, I'm not sure all of it is user friendly for you. And I think there's probably different data that would be more helpful. So certainly when we come to the next committee, it might be a different variation. So I can, because we're still in the development stage, I can certainly take back those requests about the national indicators, and also about how you'd like to drill down to communities and schools. We can look at how we do that. But the version that you have will be live and accessible so that you can go in to that database. So what you won't have is perhaps the whole system that we use on a day-by-day basis, but you'll have those headline data that you can then go into and look at.
Very quickly, any assistance I can give with that, just let me know.
It's an offer to take up there, I think, Kate. I have 4 more, then I'm going to move on. So Councillor Fuller, you're next on my question line.
Thank you. Again, it's going through the data that we've got at the moment. Thank you again, Kay, for the report. But the report says to me quite a lot of issues that we have. 3.9% of our children are home educated. That is one of the highest in the country. 94% attendance. That is lower than the national average, quite significantly. Increased suspension from schools. First choice schools. I think the secondary school, last year it was 97% of children was offered their first choice school. It's fallen to 84. That is a huge drop. I know a lot of these issues are encompassed within our education strategy, but when you look at the raw data without the explanations, then it is quite a concern. And we are trying to show that we're open for business on the island, and we need to be able to sort of like look at this data and be able to say, well, this is the reason this is happening, this is the reason that this is happening, because at the moment we don't know. We have a very, very good education strategy in place, and that I looked at the data in relationship to that, but a member of the public, the press, for example, they'll be looking at this and they'll be thinking, well, this doesn't really show the Isle of Wight as an exemplar of where we should be and what we should be trying to achieve for our young people. The other things about falling roles, funding, there are schools that are in debt. Again, how are we going to resolve those issues? And there's a lot of things that needs to be fixed, and I just need some reassurance on how that's going to happen. Sorry to be such a doom merchant, but again, it's what I'm getting from the data. And I know, talking to the students, the teachers, and the people out there, that it doesn't look as bad as the data tells us.
I think I picked up 4 points there. First one, obviously, around overall attendance. I think hopefully you got the assurance earlier on that attendance is something that really has been worked hard on in schools, and will continue to be. So we talked about suspensions earlier. That was raised, and that's another issue that will be addressed, because that will obviously feed into the attendance figures as well. Regarding, you're right about the 97 down to 84 choice of secondary schools first choices. I think that's really because we have 2 very popular and excellent secondary schools on the island that obviously people want to get their children into. So their first choice will always be a school, one of the 2 schools. I won't name the 2 schools, that's unfair. But I think there are 2 sort of standout secondary schools on the island that are always oversubscribed. So obviously they wouldn't get. That's why I think that is a big element of why the first choice has gone down, is the popularity of specifically 2 schools. Home education is always a very interesting one. I think parents choose to home educate their children for a variety of reasons, and I think we have to respect those reasons. And all we can do to address that, I think, as an authority, is to drive up standards in our schools. If anyone's taking their children out of school because they don't trust the education system, we've got to rebuild that trust in the education system. So, parents will want their children to be educated. I think there's a variety of reasons behind home education is a whole new topic, isn't it? It's a massive topic, and I respect parents' views on how they educate their children, because that's what we have to do. But it is and we also do know percentage accurately on our home educated children. I think that also makes the situation as high as it is. But I think the reassurance is that we've got to drive up the standard in the schools to address that issue as well. I think it's all connected, isn't it?
Chairman, I get exactly what you say, but I think the fact that people are choosing to educate their children at home, and we need to reassure our parents and our children that the education service that we provide is an exemplar. The data doesn't actually give me the tools to be able to go back to my community and say, well, actually, we're not doing too bad. We need to bang the drum someplace. We need to celebrate some of the things that we're doing. The fact, and I understand what you're saying about the drop in school, but that's a huge drop in 1 year. Those schools were performing well last year as well. And, last year they got a 97% first choice. This year it's dropped from 97% to 84%. That's a huge decrease. Are parents more choosy? I don't know.
Could we perhaps have a written or a comment from Naomi regarding that, perhaps?
Well, what I'm wondering as well, sorry, just to take you back to, it's absolutely fine. No, honestly, please don't apologise, because these questions are really important. So we know that the education standards on the island are not where we need them to be. So these questions are really important, because that's how we look to improve education for children. So, for example, I've just looked at on the dashboards that you have around the performance data and the indicators, number 13 under education and inclusion. So it gives you the percentage of secondary school education attendance, and there's the graph that shows you the Isle of Wight in comparison to England. Now, underneath on each of these indicators, there's an opportunity for narrative to be provided for you. So, for example, just using this one, because attendance was one of your points, it talks about 90.5%, that's approximately 1.4% the national average. So support is being provided in accordance with working together to improve school attendance. So Councillor Fuller and committee, what I'm wondering is, would it help if there's greater narrative against each of these indicators that answers those questions about the explanation, but also the assurance that you're requesting about what is being done to improve in those areas? Would that help to address some of the questions and queries?
It would, through you, Chairman, it would, of course, but I think we want to be open and we want to be transparent about this, and having a briefing or a briefing note to us as a committee is probably not what we want. We want something to go out there, and I know Marie is listening on there from comms, but I think there is a real opportunity here to be able to, we need to share this information, because otherwise people will jump to the wrong conclusions. And I think we need to be able to get that information out there. And that is a worry that I've got, because it doesn't paint the fantastic picture I and everybody else around this table should want. Thank you.
I think I said earlier, this is obviously the first sort of set of data we've seen in this format, and we can, as a suggestion from this committee, we can actually, as Kay has offered, we can actually increase the narratives to help us with more detail behind the data. I think it's a very comment, and this is the suite of data that will evolve, and it's up to us to help evolve it the way we want to evolve it. As Councillor Love's point earlier, we can evolve this data. Yeah.
Might I just suggest that I think what would be helpful is that almost to each of these sections is that it's a bit like we're saying, but the problem is, but always there should be a solutions or options to that. So the problem is X, the solutions is what we want to know about, it's what the public want to hear about. So there are 10 solutions. We're not trying to drive the strategic view is to say that these are the problems, these are the solutions, because otherwise we don't move forward strategically. So every bit of wherever we can in the report, without adding to the depth of the report, Say, so we've talked about the problem, whatever that is in here, and then there are 10 options or 5 options that are reasonable. So it might be funding is a problem. So we either raid everybody else's coppers or we do something different. These are the options and solutions, because then it's very clear to the general public. They can identify what the problem is and they can see the dilemmas and the debates that we have about the solutions, because it's solution focused. We should always be solution focused.
I think we can evolve the data around, and I've seen the nods, so we can evolve the data around all the useful comments that the committee has made. Okay, I've got 4 more, then we are going to move on. But Councillor Mosday, you're next on my list.
Mine was more referring to when we were talking about recruitment earlier. It's really more of a point than a question, that I don't think you can do just a one-way page report onto issues with recruitment, because there isn't a portfolio within this council. I know within adult social care, we have terrible problems with recruitment, and it's that massive wider issue. I think it's something that has to be discussed at somewhere like a full council, because it hits everybody. Even planning department trying to recruit people to come in, it's really hard because it's so complex. It isn't something you could have on one page, but it is a way that it does need to be discussed across council. What can we do to help the major recruitment problem? A lot of things are, there's that big blue wobbly thing, that discourages people coming here when they realise how much the ferries are, when they realise that there is a lack of rental properties here and the cost of rental properties. So I don't think it's something that you can have as a one pager, these are the solutions, because actually I would look at everybody who has been involved in any portfolios to actually say, okay, have you got no issues with recruitment? Well, actually everybody's got recruitment, and they're usually the same underlying issues. So I think the bigger picture is, how do we as a council move forward on what are the incentives that we need to give to get people to actually, what's the extra you're going to do to get people to want to take on these roles? Thank you.
I think that may be an issue for the leader and chairs meeting.
Yeah, that's
when we next
just
have
my
one.
point. We need to think of something different we can do to encourage people to work here, because otherwise we will have the same conversations over and over again.
Yeah.
I can assure you, for 9 years within adult social care, recruitment has been a terrible issue.
Okay,
Thank you, Councillor Mosdale. You're absolutely right. It's not a simple solution. Just to reassure you in the room, we're currently working with our human resources colleagues and to look at developing a recruitment strategy, because there are multiple facets to this, to how we recruit, and you're absolutely right. It's about how do we celebrate the offers that we have on the island? How do we encourage people on the mainland to come to us? How do we support our staff currently in the service to develop, which is our, one of our primary aims, to help our own staff grow and develop so that we maintain them. They have opportunities for careers here so that they stay with us, but also how do we bring in new people? So we are developing that at the moment, because it is a real challenge for us. As you've highlighted, housing is a significant factor, as of cost of travel. So we are working on a strategy at the moment to look at that for the future.
I want Councillor Critchley, Councillor Hildrop, Councillor Church, and then we'll move on. So Claire.
Thank you, Chair. I think it was just to, in response to Councillor Love's queries and the Councillor Fuller has said that we've got the strategy, and that's a way forward. It's how we as a committee can help enable those improvements to be made. And is that something we need to put on the work plan if we want to address some of those concerns that we're seeing? These reports aren't really telling us anything we don't already know. So is there a better way, to a mechanism that we can actually help the officers out there achieve this? That's what it felt like from Councillor Loves, that we want to see more action, I think, on that. And is there a way on that work plan for us to do that? I've got another question after that as well. Thank you.
Yes. We will have, obviously we'll have a quarterly update anyway. Next one's coming to our November meeting, at which time we would expect to see, some improvements in the data and the way the data is set out. But if there was a specific idea you wanted to put on the work plan, when we get to that later on, we can do that, yes. Your next question?
The other question, Kate, was the with Mosaic, as Councillor Gadbourne had brought that up. So obviously it's now enabling us to do so much more as an authority. I can't remember, I've had conversations about it. Does it enable interaction with other authorities? Or is it just our own?
Just our own. So, but it's an important point that you raise, because the ambition of government and councils going forward is for databases to interact, but we're not quite there yet. So no, Mosaic is just for ourselves as our local authority. Some of the reporting mechanisms, though, enable us to send in data to central government, so then we get the comparisons with other local authorities nationally. So it helps us to do that better in smarter time, if that makes sense. What we do have, though, is one of the systems, the case management systems that we have introduced on the island. So you'll remember I said that we've introduced three, we've implemented three, sorry, not introduced. One of which is called Sentinel. So that's our early help system. What that does enable us to do is for all partners on the island to actually submit information and record in that system also. So that has greater capabilities across the island for that multi-agency partnership working. So that one helps us integrate, which is really good, and has greater capabilities about how we can develop that further for on-island services, not with other local authorities, but certainly for on-island services. So we are looking at that for the future, how we can develop that further also.
Just, you know, to highlight that actually children are going between different authorities and those services and knowing between that. So I think it's really important that if we can improve that in any way, that we are.
Councillor Redrup.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the report and the presentation. I don't normally sit on this committee, so this has been really interesting. I've learned a lot. Thank you. My question was around the whole director's priority around intervention and prevention. So we know that domestic abuse can have a tremendous impact on the lives of children and young people, and they are victims in their own right now, including if they witness it. And intervention and prevention is incredibly important. So my question was, in what ways, how are the Directorate involving themselves with public health, our colleagues at public health, and their formulation of the domestic abuse strategy to make sure that the Directorate's priorities are reflected in that? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'm really pleased to receive that in regards to particularly raising the really important point about children being victims of domestic abuse through those legislation changes in 2021. It's really important. And actually your question is really timely because we're doing some exciting work with our partners in public health around our domestic abuse strategy. So only about, I think it was about 4 weeks ago, all partners on the island came together for a workshop, which was to look at how we develop the domestic abuse strategy on the island. So that included all of our relevant partners, police, health colleagues, children's social care, but also community partnership, education, voluntary sector. So we all came together to develop that strategy and also what our work plan and action plan is going forward. So that includes the support for our children and families on the island, how we develop our commissioning arrangements, but also how we work as a partnership to make sure that we don't duplicate and that we use our resource to best effect. So there's a lot of work taking place there. There's also, when I talked about early intervention prevention, so we're looking at our services and systems at the moment about how we start to deliver those arrangements alongside the social work reforms. So, for example, one of the areas of work that we're developing is we had an early help board, and the early help board looks at our initial intervention with children and families when they need support. And that's delivered at the moment through public health. So public health fund the majority of our early help services on the island. Our arrangement of delivery for early help differs quite significantly to other local authorities, but it provides some great opportunities. So we deliver some of our targeted early help through our family hubs and children's centres, which are based in localities. And as I say, public health are part of that, and wider health services are part of those centres, as are schools where our lead professionals are. So alongside the reforms for the future and the transformation journey we need to go on, we've reviewed the Early Help Board. It is now an Early Intervention Prevention Board, and we include all community voluntary sector services within that board also, including our Domestic Abuse Partnership Lead Officer. So what we're looking at the moment is a mapping exercise to make sure that we know where the need is across the island, where there's any gaps in provision, so that when we look at our work plan going forward, that we can make sure that we are addressing where those gaps are so that we can provide better services. And part of the social work reforms also looks at multidisciplinary teams in localities. So we're also looking at that model to see whether going forward we can develop access to domestic abuse services within those locality footprints also.
The strategy you referred to, when will that be ready, and will that come to us?
So the domestic abuse strategy goes through the Health and Wellbeing Board. Also, Adult Social Care Committee will also have sight of that. It may be that you want to invite people to talk to you about the domestic abuse strategy if appropriate.
I just add to that, Councillor Redrup and I have had this conversation only a few days ago, and it will come to adult social care. I was just waiting for the new director to be in position, and Councillor Redrup and I will have a meeting with her. I think I've got some dates being sent through now, and what we will do is bring that on our agenda of adults, and then we will invite this committee to join us at that meeting to have that discussion as well. So it will be an open invite to this committee to have that discussion, because it does cover both portfolios.
Councillor Churchman.
Yes, page 22, which will talk about 3.27 children not in suspended or whatever. I'd like to know how many of those are permanent suspensions. And my first and most pressing question is, what happens to these children all day? Are children's social services notified of the fact that the children have been excluded from school? I'm thinking obviously of working parents. Are these children just left alone? Is there anybody looking over them? And a question for our legal beagle. It is a parent's duty to send their children to school, correct? And it is the council's duty to provide an education for that children. So where do these exclusions fit inside the judicial system, please, Justin?
First question first. That may be one. If the breakdown of the exclusions was mentioned earlier, and I think it's important. 26.9%. We would like a breakdown of those exclusions, as mentioned earlier. I think that's as a committee, we would like an update from Naomi when she's back, or from Beth if she's got it, around that 26.9%. How many of those are permanent, temporary? So if we could have that breakdown, that would be useful, definitely. I'm not a legal beagle, so I've never been called that in my life. So,
Chair, I don't think I'll do it justice by providing an answer off the cuff. I think I'd have to provide a written answer.
I think that's fair. Yeah. Mr. Thorne will supply a written answer to the second part of your question, and we'll get Naomi to do the first part. I wouldn't expect Kay to answer that one at this stage. So I'll move to the recommendation, except what Councillor Love said about the wording. It is a play on words, but we are noting the content of this report as the quarterly report content, with obviously all the caveats. We deep dived into that for some of the answers we want. So can I have a proposal that we note, Councillor Hendry will propose that we note the report. I've seconded for Councillor Crichton. All those in favour of the recommendation that the committee know the operational financial performance of the Children's Services Directorate? Thank you. All those abstaining? And no one against, and I accept why. Thank you. So, and can I thank officers for the detailed report? I know it will evolve. So next quarter, we'll see an evolution of this, taking on point all the points we mentioned. Yeah. Okay, we move to item 6B, the fostering annual report 2024-2025, which is over to Mark.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, thank you and good evening, everyone. I'm going to take the same tack that actually the report, the fostering annual report, has been circulating. So I'm going to make the assumption that you've read it, and similarly as Kay has done, I will go through some of the highlights and some of the actions that have come from that, and I'll invite questions at the end if that's okay. Thank you. The Isle of Wight Fostering Service Annual Report covers a period from April 24 through to March 25. So it covers a period of both parts of those years, and it outlines performance and challenges and also the achievements throughout the year, and also some discussions around how we demonstrate what we're doing as a fostering service, but also some of the work streams and targets set for the coming years as well, particularly around fostering recruitments. It's fair to say that the last focus visit for our fostering service was in 2010, where it was deemed it was a good service, and similarly that was the case in our 2023 full inspection as well. The service remains good, and we're busy trying to build upon those really good foundations to get us hopefully to outstanding, but that's not without its challenges, and some of those I'll discuss here today. Some of the highlights from the reports, I think probably the main one and the real challenge for us is some of our recruitment challenges, and I know I've been here before where I've discussed them as well, around some of our challenges around recruiting foster carers. For the last year, we had 3 general foster carers that were recruited. That was a decrease from 6 from the year before, which this does reflect national trends. It is extremely difficult to recruit foster carers for many different reasons. And that is despite actually on this year we had much more activities within the community online as well to attract foster carers, but we just didn't attract them. We're also in a regional partnership with the local authority Fostering South East. That is a fairly new partnership. It's been going for about a year now, just over a year, but that incorporates 20 local authorities across the whole of the South East, which is a government initiative really to kind of pool some of the resources around attracting new foster carers through marketing strategies, and them doing some of the marketing for us. I think it's fair to say I think they've probably had a tough year. We've not seen the benefits from that yet, but we're hopeful in time as well that as they become more mature in some of their marketing strategies, that we will see referrals for foster carers. Currently, all our foster carers that we have recruited or our inquiries are coming through our own activities that we do across the island and across social media. Connected carers, so our connected foster carers, so these are foster carers that are known to children, quite often close relatives, friends, families, someone that has a really close connection to children. There were 35 assessments completed in the year. I think I'll come on to the numbers of where we are with general and connected foster carers in a bit, but what it does reflect is that we really do have a strong commitment to keeping children with their families or people that know them. We know, and research tells us that children do much better with somebody that knows them rather than going on to foster care. But similarly, our connected foster carers are treated equitably the same as our general foster carers. They have good access to our training and supervision and things as well by our social workers. But it is a trend that we are seeing more and more connected foster carers, which is positive for children. Our training support, there were 77 foster carer households, 37 of those were general foster carers, 40 were connected foster carers, access a wide range of training. I'll name a few, there's lots that we do. So we do training on attachment, autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorders, independent skills and trauma, just to name a few. But we do have a very quite extensive training package for our foster carers. We do run light bite sessions as well. So these are sessions that are held for like an hour or so, very, very quick sessions. And actually what we found is that actually the turnout for that is quite low. So we will review the offer and just to see whether it is right and whether or not we should be encouraging more foster carers to attend, and if it is the right training for them as well. We also had a supervision of our foster carers is average around 96%. So again, it's something I'm really kind of proud of. You know, the majority of foster carers get good supervision and in a timely way, and it's really important that we support them to be able to care for our children well. Our fostering panel, the fostering panel approved 11 carers for that year. 3, as I've touched on, were general foster carers, and again, 8 of them were connected foster carers, again, reflecting the trend that I've spoken about. They did consider 11 terminations of approval as well. And again, similarly, there were for various reasons. Often we've had some foster carers that have retired, some have left the area. And I think there was one that we had a concern of care query about as well. But the majority usually personal circumstances are around foster carers, around terminations. Our household reviews, these are reviews of our foster carers and annual reviews. Again, our performance has fluctuated around that. We realise there's a challenge for us. Some of that has been around staffing, some of the issues we've been speaking here today around recruitment, some of our gaps and things with some of our social workers. So that has impacted. Our recruitment data for the year, we had 59 inquiries. As I said, those have all come through our own fostering team. That was an increase on the previous year of 44. Of those, 8 progressed to applications, 7 went on for an assessment, but of those, only 3 were approved as foster carers. So we have a conversion rate from basically inquiry to being an approved foster carer. That rate was at 6% this year. Again, previous year is about 13.6%, but that would be the kind of 50% reduction that we've had in approved carers. Again, just to reiterate, this does mirror the national trend and some of the difficulties we have recruiting general foster carers. So it's not necessarily out of kilter with partner local authorities. Some of our priorities for the next 2 years, obviously we remain deeply committed to ensuring that our cared for children have decent access to decent homes, well-trained foster carers, and that we can find the right homes for them at the right time. We do, though, continue to have the face of challenges with recruitment and finding our placement sufficiency or home sufficiency for our children. What we intend to do, we are reviewing and relaunching our recruitment and retention strategy. Some of the things within that we'll be looking at and developing a new marketing strategy about our branding, looking at our website. Our website's quite dated. We do get caught up sometimes with the comms and how we have to market ourselves as a local authority, but we're hoping to get some advice about how we kind of move away from that to make it far more interactive and attractive. And actually that is the way that the most really successful campaigns are working, having a really good interactive and attractive website. So that is certainly one of our priorities. And that will be as well co-designed with our children, our care experience young people, and of course our foster carers who care for our children on a daily basis. There's a couple of other things that have come out from the report or needs. So our household reviews currently are reviewed by members of our team, and actually it is good practice to have somebody independent to look over our household reviews. So we are looking at employing a fostering independent reviewing officer, similar to our independent reviewing officers that oversee our care plans for children. Actually, this would be to look at the household reviews and to make recommendations from that. And we hope that will really help with some of the quality and things of our household reviews, and obviously drive up some of the standards of our foster carers. A really big one for us, reviewing of fees and support for our foster carers. One thing quite unique, I guess, being on the island is that we're surrounded by other local authorities. We're in competition with the independent fostering agencies. I think it's fair to say that our rates aren't that competitive. I think it's also fair to say that a lot of foster carers don't necessarily come in to this area of work to look and care for our children because of money, but actually if you're going to get paid more with somebody else and still have the rewarding job of being a foster carer, you're likely to go somewhere else. So that is a really big piece of work that we need to do. We do need to be competitive with our partners as well. We're not going to attract the carers that we want. Another area of work that we do, and again, we're looking at for our fostering panel. So currently they should have a independent panel advisor. Currently it's being filled by a member of our team. Again, in lines with national good practice. It shouldn't be, it needs to be somebody completely independent. So again, we're looking at that role and how we can fill that. I think that's probably about it. There are the highlights, but like I said, I think it's just really fair to say that, you know, we are, you know, have some real challenges in trying to track, but actually I wanted to reassure people that we do have a plan in place and a strategy, and a lot of it does revolve around our marketing, recruitment, and making it a far more attractive offer for our foster carers. But also there's an element of that in keeping the foster carers that we've got as well. We do need to retain them, and we're working really hard to make them feel valued as they very much are. Again, the rates and things I think will go a long way in helping to retain them. So that's all I've got, but I'm more than happy to take some questions.
Mark, thank you for your report, and thank you to the team for all they're doing, because I know it's a pretty tricky area to get fostering right. And, I know you and the team have got a strategy and the challenge you and your team are going through, so I appreciate that. I'm going to, Chairman's prerogative to ask the first question. Page 108, I was curious actually, I know this report went
108. Well, I don't think I've.
Oh,
that's okay.
Sorry.
I was going to say I don't remember writing 108.
3.5. Point 3.5. I know this has gone through corporate parenting board the other week,
Okay.
but I was just curious. Obviously, you know, our number of inquiries has gone up massively.
Yeah.
You know, our home visits has gone up.
Yeah.
Yet the percentage of conversion has gone down quite alarmingly. I know it's in line with national trend. I get that. Is it because we're advertising in the wrong places, or I don't know? In your opinion.
That's okay. Yeah.
In your opinion, because that if everything else is going up,
Yeah.
conversion is going down alarmingly. So I'm just curious. Really.
It's probably a number of reasons. Obviously there is a process to go through, and actually our foster carers may well drop out somewhere along that process. And actually, even if we get to an assessment, actually we may still assess that actually, although they've put themselves forward and got that far, that actually they still don't meet some of those standards. And some of those standards might be about where they live, having the accommodation, sometimes actually understanding the needs of children and things. So I think it's kind of multi-layered, and again we're talking small numbers, but actually it has percentage-wise it has a big impact. So it's difficult to give you one answer, but there will be different reasons.
I think what is encouraging is the fact that we're getting a lot more inquiries. We are doing due diligence and only appointing and accepting the correct people. Well, I think that's a key thing to bring out of this. It's right that we get the right people.
Yeah.
Kay, did you want to?
If I may add to that. So yeah, Mark is absolutely right. It's a national trend in regards to the number of inquiries through to assessment, initial home visit and assessment. However, there is a however, because there is more that we can do to improve. So Mark just talked to you a bit about competing with independent fostering agencies, which is accurate, but also we do work very closely with our independent fostering agencies because they also care for our children on the island. We have a lot that we can learn from independent fostering agencies. So when it looks at their recruitment and their retention approach, I think it's fair to say they are a lot more professional. Also from the initial point of inquiry through to contact through inquiry through to contact and initial home visits, they do that much more swiftly than we do. So we're reviewing our timeframes and our approach and how we do that, so to make sure we're much more aligned with independent fostering agencies, so more professional and business minded in that regard. And then also the recruitment strategy is so critical for us, because Mark referred to during the last year, lots of activity in the community. Our team have spent lots of time and effort going out to events across the island, seeing if they can recruit foster carers. And again, we see that there's opportunities to be much smarter about those activities when we're doing face-to-face activity, because what we need to look at is how many inquiries come from those activities. Does that then convert? And what we do know is that if we look at national marketing campaigns, we know that social media, online platforms, the website that Mark talked to you about actually gains more recruitment, live recruitment through to inquiry and then assessment. So what we're going to do is be much more smarter about our time and our effort and how we do that recruitment activity. So online social media will be really critical for us.
Got to say that, 'cause I was at the Chale show the other week, working for on the MS store, and I went to the fostering, RI Council fostering people, and I started having a nice chat to a young lady who didn't know who I was. The other lady then turned back and said hello, Paul, and gave it away a bit. But yeah, I know that there was two people there actually talking to people at the show.
Yeah. I love that. And the other opportunities that we have is, we know one of the other ways that people consider fostering is through word of mouth. So, you know, you'll be aware through our corporate parenting board and strategy, our counsellors who are part of our board, we're looking at them becoming portfolio holders for different elements of the strategy, one of which will be fostering recruitment and retention. So it's also using opportunities with audiences to talk about the importance of fostering, the value for that, how we can, you know, provide really good quality homes for our children. So again, we'll encourage you to support us in that, to talk about people if you're in different events, or whether that be businesses or community, to talk about fostering as opportunities for people on the island.
Councillors, questions? Councillor Redrup just beat Councillor Mosdale with a hand up. So Councillor Redrup.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. And again, I don't normally sit on this committee, so this is all very new to me, but something I do know is marketing, so that's my job. So before coming to this committee, one of the first things I did was Google it to see at what point in the SEO the council features, and it's actually quite good, it's high up. You are sort of beat a little bit by sponsored ads from the other competitors. It's interesting that you said that, because I was a bit confused by that as someone that doesn't know anything about fostering at all. I always assumed it was a local authority thing. So then when I see all these other brands, I guess, I was a bit confused by that. And when I went onto the Isle of Wight Council website, it was a bit of a challenge to get the answers that I wanted. So it's really good to hear that you're already aware of that, and that's what you're going to be working on, because I think putting the thought into someone's mind that they could be a foster carer is probably one of your biggest challenges, because there's a lot of people who would be suitable for it have never thought about it. So converting them is probably a big challenge. My question to you was going to be about nationwide. Are there any other authorities or councils who are doing things in a particularly interesting way that you might take inspiration from?
I think most local authorities, it is a challenge for sure. Some of the things that I've looked at, and I think it's something we could do, and I know we've spoken about it. What some local authorities are better for is actually the way they target some of their recruitment campaigns. So I'm going to give you quite a good example. If we targeted teachers or people within the NHS, or actually look for people that actually work in that kind of caring kind of profession already. There's been some really good pieces of work in other local authorities where they've done that, and actually just targeting that one kind of group, and to attract the right kind of person. So it's about us going to search for them rather than come to us. And again, that's something we really want to start doing. So we've already had discussions with the NHS, for instance, around being able to do some marketing through them, through some of their activities, newsletters and things as well, to try and get the message out there. But I do, Kay might know some more, but the ones that have been really effective have been really targeting particular groups of adults, particularly from those kind of professions.
You have a follow-up question?
Sorry, I get very passionate around the world of corporate parenting. Yeah, it is a passion. And you're absolutely right about looking at other local authorities as well. So there are some that stand out. So, for example, Slough, Stoke-on-Trent. So if you look at them online, you'll see their platform and their presence is great. So they're always thinking in, with new initiatives about how they market, what they do and how, but also they involve the wider community and also their children and foster carers. So as Mark's talked about, we want to do this co-developing and co-designing with our children who are cared for and our foster carers. So you're absolutely right. There are a number of local authorities that do things quite creatively and use different campaigns and opportunities. One of the other areas that we know that works really successfully is that fostering recruitment doesn't just sit with us as children's social care, it becomes a council event. So that it becomes, so when I say to you about word of mouth, where you go out to events, it's talking about opportunities to foster. So what we're hoping is that as part of our strategy, we will become a fostering friendly local authority, and that will give us a kite mark that says that actually we support our own council employees and staff to become foster carers. It then enables us to encourage NHS, bigger employers, Vector, so forth, fire, rescue, police, to become fostering friendly employers also, so that we become a fostering friendly local authority, as in Ireland. So that would be the ambition, so that there are opportunities that we'd like to pursue. And actually these are areas, going back to Councillor Love's point earlier about what can you do as a committee to support us in those developments. So as we develop those action plans and bring them here about ideas, so your endorsement that we're requesting today in some of these real priorities and strategies we'd like to employ, we'd welcome your support with that so that we can shape these priorities.
Councillor Mosdale.
Thank you. I have two things. And my question firstly was going to be about what do we do as a council to encourage our staff to become foster carers? And one of the things that I've got friends who foster, and they've been doing it for years and they're exceptional. They do say that those first few days when a child joins your household is the most difficult because you need to get them settled. And I wondered as a council if we could look to actually say, if you're a foster carer within this council and you have a new child that joins your household, you could have a couple of days annual leave, given to you as an extra to encourage the mission. That would be something I would have thought that would actually think to people, do you know what, I get a bit of extra leave to actually help that and make that transition earlier. Then I do have another question. I just wondered, what do we give to incentivize and make us look, encourage fostering?
So just on the first point that you made in regards to like annual leave allowance, if a foster carer has a new child, if they're an employee, that's what the fostering friendly employer strategy would look to introduce. So it's a piece of work that Mark and his team are going to look at developing, and then obviously it would have to come here for sign off because it's part of the human resources response also. So additional days for annual leave for training and so on and so forth, or if a child that's being cared for is struggling particularly, that there's flexibility around foster carers who are employees being able to provide for their care. So yeah, absolutely, that will be in that strategy.
And then my other question is, it was on 5.11 about the household reviews, which did concern me. But the bit that I would like to know is, it says that you've got some improvements, and I like the fact that you're going to be doing somebody independent. But my concern is the bit, and it always concerns me when it says a dip due to high staff sickness. So if that was coming to adults, we would want to drill down to say, is that stress? Are you managing your staff sickness, and what support is the staff being get to resolve this issue? It could be something, more that you had a dose of COVID going through. But you know what I mean? I want to know what's being done to support those staff if it is stress related.
I do know the members. There was one member of staff. It's only a very small team, so if you have one member of staff off long term, it has a really significant impact. What I can say, it was not stress related, but health related. But similarly, if staff do feel stress and things, then we've got the stress tools and things to work with them, and we can support them in many other ways as well. But on this occasion, I do know it wasn't work stress related.
Because there is no doubt with working within social services, whether it's adults or children, is a very stressful environment to work with.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, but we do support our staff very well with regular supervision, where we talk about their welfare, how we can look at their workloads, and like I say, use stress management tools if needed to do so.
Just something that was noted that during COVID and people were working from home,
Yeah.
that actually, I know within adults definitely at the time, it was found that social workers really struggled because there is
Yeah.
nothing like going into the tea room, making a cup of tea and talking to your colleagues about your day and what's on your shoulders.
Completely agree. And we've got a program of actually we work a hybrid model, but actually we're also because actually sometimes working from home can be really beneficial when you need that time away. But actually, I think we strike the balance quite well. Most of our staff are in a few days a week. Because of that, that is exactly it. When during COVID and that, it's a very lonely place to be, particularly when you're dealing with such kind of stressful and emotive situations. So our staff regularly come in. They have space to come into the office. They have regular team meetings. Our supervisions on the whole are face to face where they can be. And we actively encourage to see our staff. It's good to see them, and it is some of those soft kind of discussions and things and peer support as much as anything else. So yeah.
Thank you. In the report, you mentioned connected carers.
Yeah.
After those children have moved on, do many of those people fostering stay in the system, or is there any work we can do to try and keep them on, as we know they are doing a good job?
Really good question. Actually, I don't know the answer. What I do know is it's very few. I think it's fair to say the majority of our connected carers have come into this because of a child or young person that they know, and they already have that attachment, knowledge, and for them it makes it sometimes quite easy, but it can be challenging as well, because actually you're taking on a different role. So a grandparent, for instance, is a grandparent, but also we have rules around them being a foster care and things. But actually, it's a really good point. Maybe we should be speaking to them when their children do leave their care and things, which often they do at 18, but sometimes they stay post 18 as well with those connected carers. But I think it's fair to say that they come into it for different reasons. But that's not to say that we should be having those discussions, actually. I think, yeah. Yes, really good question.
They are opportunities that we will pursue. What we are seeing is an increase in the number of connected carers, so they may be family members or friends, as Mark has just said, and actually we want them to increase further, because it's always right for children to remain with family. So part of the work that we're developing as well through the sufficiency strategy is looking at family networks, so that at the earliest point about early intervention prevention, so that we're looking at children's networks. So that's to help families where they're struggling or where there's support needs, but also if it means that children can't remain with birth parents or carers, that they can live with their extended family. But you are absolutely right. Part of our strategy going forward needs to be where, because those people are experienced as carers, certainly if those children then move on into adulthood, but even if they want to care for wider children, that we look at them for wider fostering arrangements also. So that will be part of our strategy about recruitment going forward.
Any more questions? Councillor Churchman.
I just wondered how many fostering parents eventually adopt children. Is this encouraged, or does it just happen? The reason I ask, I had a brother, had 4 boys, wanted a girl, and they fostered small babies for a time until a little girl arrived. And so I just wondered whether this comes into your equations.
It does happen. Rachel's going to give a nice presentation on adoption there. Actually, it might be something that Rachel might be able to touch on, but it does happen. Yes, I couldn't give you the figures for the last year, but it very much does happen.
Do I have any more questions from committee members? Councillor Gladwin.
Yes, I was just interested to hear about the fostering agencies, and I just wondered how they worked in connection with what you actually do yourselves.
Okay. So the independent fostering agencies, they are actually really key partners, although we kind of feel we are in competition, but at times we are. We don't have enough homes of our own for our own general foster carers. So actually, the independent foster agencies have become absolutely crucial in finding homes for our children. We have a good network of them. Obviously, if a child is requiring a home and we can't give that a child home because we don't have enough carers of our own, we go out nationally, regionally, to seek alternative foster carers. There are a number of independent foster agencies and carers on the island. We'd obviously seek them first because it's right for the children. But actually, they're becoming more and more critical to us. If I'm honest with you, we would be have more challenges if we didn't have good relationships with them. So we have a home finding team that have a really good network with their independent fostering agencies. We work closely with them. Similarly, any that are looking after our children, we're always part of planning with them, working alongside them. So actually, they're crucial partners very much, and we do have a good relationship with them on the whole.
Yes, I was just wondering who actually funds the agencies?
Oh, there's a number.
Oh.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to list all of those
Yeah.
for you this evening. There are a number of independent fostering agencies on the island that are private companies. Some of them are smaller enterprises, but some of them are national enterprises that are based on the island. And whilst we're looking at our own recruitment, the reason we want to grow our own foster families is because that enables us to have more control about the children that we place there, the matching, the level of support that we provide and the oversight for those children, and also the plans for the future for the children. But there will always be independent fostering agencies, I think it's fair to say. So the partnerships that we have is because where there are independent fostering agencies on the island, we want them to look after our children, because of course we do have children who are cared for by other local authorities placed on the island also. So that's why those relationships are really critical for us.
In the absence of any further question, I like data. Recruitment data is very interesting. Obviously doing a lot of strategies. We're getting a lot more inquiries, which is encouraging. I know we only have this report once a year. I'm not going to suggest we have, an interim reporting like that, but could we perhaps have just one little tiny set of data in November? In November, we got our Q2 data meeting. I'd just be curious I'd add a recommendation, whatever. Then in November, we just had those numbers you put here again, recruitment data, 59, 27, 8, just an update year to date on where we are with those sort of 6 numbers, really. Because Councillor Love's point, we need to sort of keep on top of this. I'd just be curious to know how we're doing year to date, because this is from 1st of April, so end of April rather, so 1st of April to March
this year.
So I'd just be keen in November to know year to date, how we're doing on inquiries, initial home visits, without causing you any extra work, Mark.
No,
This is the running total you've got.
Yeah, no, the data is really easy to get. So
We add that perhaps as a recommendation, I think it's recommendation to the acceptance would be the best way of doing it. So therefore, members' recommendations are that committee note the report and agree that the council is meeting its statutory requirements. Committee endorses the recommendations for service improvement included within the report, section 6, appendix 1. And I want to add a third recommendation that we ask for a brief data update on the recruitment at our November meeting. So at least we get an idea of, and because there's a lot of actions. If they're proving to be successful, let's note it and celebrate it. Is that going to cause too much problem?
no, not at all.
So I propose you adding that third recommendation. Thank you. Councillor Fuller seconds that. So can we just have a vote on those now 3 recommendations? All those in favour? Thank you. Mark, thank you again to you and your team for all you're doing. I just want us to celebrate, successes we're doing, so the strategies are working. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to 6C, the Adoption Annual Report 2024-25, and invite Rachel to introduce her report.
Chair. Good evening, councillors, and thank you for having me. We're now in our, I'm going to do the same as Kay and Mark. Let's do some highlights. Please ask me any questions afterwards. So we're in our 6th year of Adopt South, which seems quite incredible actually. And we've had another strong year, which I'm really pleased to be able to tell you about. So we've had 757 inquiries, 135 of those, I checked before I came, were from the Isle of Wight residents. We had 204 people want to go forward. We went forward with 168 families and we approved 105. I'm really pleased with that number. As you'll see from the report, it was 25% increase from last year. And I think what was important is that nationally, recruitment is really challenging for other REAs. So we are one of 32 REAs now, and we're one of 3 that actually haven't got an adopter gap. So the others have a real big gap between how many children they have and how many adopters they have. And I guess just to give a picture nationally, it's not a great picture. There are just less than 3,000 children waiting nationally, with just about 1,500 children that have the adopter gap is so big. There are 1,500 with the gap of adopters. That includes also our voluntary agency. So the equivalent of your IFAs, that's our what we call our VAAs. So we ended our year 6 with 58 prospective adopters available. Not all of those didn't have a proposed match. They hadn't gone forward, so those were ones. There were 43 of those that we were linking and talking to our local authority teams as to whether they were suitable for children or not, for those particular children. So it's always difficult really to know how many you want to have, to have available. Always choice is good, isn't it? Our timescales continue to be really good. So the government give us 5 days to answer and respond to a registration of interest. And we did that in 3.3 days last year. They give us 2 months to do stage 1 of the process. And we did that in less time, in 1.7 months. And stage 2, we're given 4 months, and we did that in 3.7 months. And our overall journey was 5.5 months. The fastest, I'm very proud to say, out of all of the other REAs. And I think for me, it's about timeliness for our adopters that come forward. And also, we need to place our children. So we don't want delays. Just moving on to our family finding, we found families for 125 children last year. 17 of those were from the island. We had 10 children over the age of 5, 4 of those from the island. So in proportion, you had more older children than the other local authorities. We found families for 19 sibling groups, and 3 of those were from the island. We ended the year with just 9 children that we couldn't place. And I'm pleased to say that just 1 of those was from the island. And even more pleased to say that I know we found a family for that child now. And currently we haven't got any waiting, which is great news. Again, just to give a bit of example about sort of the national picture, the latest data is out. It's been published, and there are 4 REAs which have over 100 children waiting. There are 7 REAs that have between 70 to 90 children, and there are 10 that have got between 40 to 60. So I'm really pleased that we ended with our 9. In fact, there was just 1 that had less than us. But when you put it in comparison, we had 117 children that we needed to place, and that REA just had 25. So it's hard to compare then, isn't it really? So for the children coming through and who needed an adoptive family, there was an increase across our region. There was 126 altogether, and there were 13 from the Isle of Wight, which for the island was a 44% increase, as we had 9 the previous year. And moving on to placement orders, so that's when the court gives us that authority then to find a family. Again, that was increased. There were 117 altogether, 14 from the island, which was a 100% increase. The previous year we had just 7. We matched 97, 11 of those were from the island, and that compared to 5 the previous year. And there were 126 adoption orders, 12 from the island, compared to 7 the previous year. And I'm pleased that there were no disruptions for the island. In fact, for the whole of the 6 years, there haven't been any disruptions. So really good matching, working together from our local authority teams and for Adopt House as well. Just moving on to scorecards. So scorecard is where we are measured by the government from the point of being looked after to moving into it with an adopted family. And the government give us 426 days to do that. Overall, we met that and were under for each local authority. The overall average was 402 days, but really pleased that the island did even better. They ended on 396 days, so a really great timescale. And nationally, we were one of just 2 REAs that achieved that. Scorecard 2 is from placement order. So when the court gives us that okay to find a family and to match, we have 121 days. We're slightly over overall. I think it is a really tough measure, is my view, but the island did very well, and they averaged 142 days for their children. So again, not much more than the government average, which is really good. Sorry, not the government average, because the government average is much more than that, but that's the government target that they set us. So just moving on to adoption support, we have got an adoption support dedicated team. So for those families that need support afterwards, and we really encourage them to come forward and have our support and not wait till they're in crisis. And that we offer a range of, whether it's workshops or training, family fun days. The family fun days are a joy when you see those families there that are just delighted, and to see those children grow year after year and to meet them again is something really special. Our inquiries have really increased, as you might have seen from the report. So we had 735 inquiries altogether, which was a 175% increase. In some ways, I'm really encouraged by that, because I think it means that people are reaching out to us, which is what they need to do. And we ended the year with 597 children open to the team, to the adoption support team. 54 of those were from the island, but we had nearly 100 actually on our database. So those are ones that are reaching out and actually going to training in our groups. We commissioned some youth activities with a company called Brownworks, and actually we make sure as well they had 3 activities on the Isle of Wight, so there's always priority for Isle of Wight children. They can come to all of them, but we make sure that those ones held on the Isle of Wight are dedicated, you know, always priority for Isle of Wight children. So just moving on, the other part of adoption that we do is what we now call keeping in touch, and used to be called the Adoption Information Exchange. So that's when our families, our birth families, still stay in touch with their children. It may be through letterbox contact once a year, but we're really encouraging different ways to keep in contact, because what we know is that adopted children are very likely to perhaps want to be curious when they get 18, and we just really want to help them know who they are and to keep in touch if that's appropriate for that child, of course, and for both families. So we've implemented a new digital system called Letter Swap, which is obviously it has to be with the agreement of birth families, as well as, of course, our adopters, but they can communicate on that platform and they could exchange photographs if that's what is the right thing to do, as well as perhaps children can write things and different memos or whatever that that's appropriate. We ended the year, so it's a new system. We only implemented it last year, but we ended with 64 families, and I know that's increased since then, that have chosen to do that. And the other part of what we do is a service for adopted adults. So that's when our adopted adults, quite often later in life, want to find out about their records, or perhaps they may want to trace, you know, if family members are still alive. And so we had 365 inquiries for that service, and we allocated 154. And then just to end my part, out of those 97 we matched, we placed just 5 externally, so we were able to find adopters in-house for all the others. So we were reduced on spend. Over the 6 years, we have been really low on our interagency spend, and that's been in fact much lower than any other REA. And if I draw you back to the 100 children that some REAs are waiting, even when they haven't got adopters, that does mean that they need to reach out to the voluntary agencies at a cost. It averages now 40,000 for the voluntary agency for one child. So if you can imagine how many, you know, what that would cost if you're actually, in some of them are placing 50% of their children externally. We have an income target in our budget to balance, and we exceeded that this year, which was good news. So we had 8 families that took children from outside our agency, but we obviously get some money for funding for that. And so just to balance, actually, the income that we had was 232,000 and our purchases were 152. So quite significantly more we had income rather than those we actually bought. And just finally from me, there is the Adoption Support and Guardianship Support Fund, which is an amazing support for our families. And we were able to claim 1.7 million this year, and that's mainly for therapies. It's quite strict criteria for what we can claim for, but really does make a massive difference to many of our children and families' lives. And so for over the 6 years, we've just reached over just 6 million now of what we claimed, which has been really, really helpful. I'm going to pause now, but if you'd like to ask me any questions, I'm very welcome to answer them.
Rachel, thank you for your detailed report. Back in 2019, when I had to sign this decision off to join Adopt South, because I was cabinet member at the time, I did have reservations about working with Hampshire, Portsmouth and Southampton. This proved to be a great success. There's lots of positive in this report. It's quite ironical when we're now talking about the other horrible D word at the moment, that Hampshire, Portsmouth, Southampton and the Isle of Wight have produced something that really works for the benefit of young people. So it's quite ironical timing, really. But thank you for your report. It's very detailed. There's lots of data in here. So members who would like to kick off with a question? Councillor Churchman.
Not a question, but a comment. As you said, when we joined Hampshire, the Isle of Wight adoption and fostering a phenomenal change. And I don't think we must ever forget what, in fact, they did for us. And I congratulate you on what you're doing.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it hugely. It's been a huge challenge in bringing forward local authorities together and working with them, but it's been amazing. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And we've got some great partnership working, including with our Wight colleagues.
You're talking like a mayor now, you are.
I know.
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. Just wanted to ask a question concerning page 121. It looks really, really positive, and I'm sure it will be. But it's about sibling groups.
Yes.
I think there is always a worry that siblings may be split up.
Yes.
Does that happen with you? Is it by choice, or do we see siblings wherever they can to be stuck together? Because
Absolutely.
you know it can be quite traumatic for little people to be separated from not only mum and dad but also from your brother or sister as well. And I just wanted to know about the sibling groups and what you do to try to keep the children together.
Yeah. We have placed all our sibling groups, which I'm really pleased to say, and including an Isle of Wight sibling group 3, which was amazing actually. So we kept those together. And yes, we have. So the only times we haven't done is when actually a sibling assessment assesses that it's not right for those children to be together. And if that's the case, then we would still find families and do our utmost to make sure that contact continues, and we will support that. So it might be that just for some of our children, it's not right for them to be together, but they have very good contact. But for all of those that the sibling assessment has felt that they should be together, we would absolutely continue to find a family that they are together.
You have a supplementary question? Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things you mentioned was about an online portal, and I think it's under, is it mailbox exchanges?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Is there an oversight where you can see what the birth parents and the children are posting to each other? So I'm just worried about safeguarding side of things.
Yes, we do. So this year, so up until recently, which is earlier last year actually, we've always opened those exchanges, and we have looked to make sure there was nothing in there that we were concerned about. Now, from last year, we took the decision to not do that as part of our Keep in Touch programme, and really trying to look differently at how we do keep in touch. But those letters go to the adopters. So they would still look at those first. And we just wondered what was the purpose of us actually doing that. So we took the decision and we went out and we wrote to all our adopters and just felt actually, we know we want to do this in a way that doesn't interfere. And particularly if they do use the platform of letter swap and actually do the digital way, then actually we just want to, but it will still go through obviously our adoptive parents. So they would read it first and make sure that they make that decision. Does that answer your question?
Do you have any further hands raised? Kay, do you want to add something?
Thank you. I'm really pleased that Rachel's here because you can see there's been excellent work over the last year and actually still continues to be. And Rachel's agreed today to do some work with Mark and I more closely around recruitment approaches so that we can transfer some of those really good ways of working for our fostering service also. However, I am going to raise a challenge with you that I think it's really important for you to be aware of as a committee and for yourself, Chair, in regards to a significant part of the adoption process currently. So with any prospective adopters, it's really important that part of that process is undertaken by a medical advisor. So the medical advisor is able to oversee those health assessments to make sure that those prospective adopters are of good health, so that when we're matching children, that we know that those carers are able to provide for those children in the long term from a health perspective. It's a statutory part of the process. However, in order to deliver upon that, we have to have that arrangement commissioned through the Integrated Care Board, the ICB. And currently, I think it's really important that you're aware that we've been without a medical advisor for some months on the island. So in January, the medical advisor who was available on the island retired or ceased to continue to provide that service. And actually, it's really important for me to say that this is not just for our children seeking adoption. Actually, it's also for foster carers as well. I should have said that from the earliest point. So it's a statutory part of our process to be able to go through the assessment process for both adopters and foster carers before they can go to panel and get agreed that that medical advisor has that oversight. So we've been without a permanent person since January through Adopt South and our partners across Hampshire, Southampton and Portsmouth. The medical advisors in those areas were able to provide that for an interim period, but they're no longer able to provide that because of capacity. So we've been without any arrangement for some time now. There was an interim arrangement put in place for a few weeks only. So at the moment, we've got 3 children who are going through the adoption process care proceedings where without a medical advisor oversight. We've got 5 children that are waiting for prospective adopters, waiting to be matched with children without medical advisor oversight also. I've raised this and I've escalated it with the ICB and our NHS Trust and NHS community partners who were providing that. And whilst that escalation has had some outcome and response, we've got another interim arrangement for 3 months. However, we're still without a long-term solution. So just linking back to Councillor Love's earlier issue that he raised about speech and language support as well through the ICB for children. I wonder whether the committee would agree for a letter to be written from the committee and yourself, Chair, to raise this as an issue, because it is quite a critical area. So when Rachel's talking about those successes that we have about meeting those timeframes, so it doesn't create delay for children, the risk that we have going forward without a medical advisor is that there will be delay for children in matching their adoptive placements going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is spot on. If you know, if you've escalated it, the more we could do to help, the better. To Councillor Love's point earlier, if I come and see you and we'll draft a letter and I'll send it, you know, with my name on it as chair of the committee, absolutely. I'm sure no one busy happy with that. Yeah.
All I wanted to ask was, would there be a funding implication to us doing this? Because if we do appoint a medical advisor, then there will need to be the buy-in from the local authority. I know it's just one question that is pretty minor really in the overall scheme of things. But even though there will be a potential cost implication, it's certainly something we should be doing. And I think the service really needs it, and desperately, if there is a financial implication to it, I think we would be fooling ourselves if we didn't think it was money well spent. And I think, to have the support of Portsmouth, Southampton and our neighbouring authorities is also very important. And I would urge perhaps that you work also with a joint letter from all authorities to make sure that that request is made. Because we're going over to a mayoral authority next May, it would be nice to have that joined up thinking between all agencies.
Potentially going over to mayoral authority next May. Sorry, Councillor Love, sorry, yeah. You want to add to that, yeah?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's actually not our authority. This is about Integrated Care Board. They are responsible for that funding and for that appointment. So whilst, yes, if we had to step in, it would be a very different position. But at the moment, they have the legal responsibility to provide that. And I am concerned about the Integrated Care Board and the fact that they appear to be on a hold model for commissioning those services. I realise that things are difficult for them. I'm not trying to take that away from them in any way, shape or form. But the fact is, we have the direct responsibility for children's health and well-being and care. And they cannot simply go from an arrangement from, so we have to find, it comes back to recruitment again and all of those things, but we have to find a different way of doing things. So if we cannot recruit, or they cannot recruit the necessary psychologists, etc., to do the assessments of things, then they have to find a new way of doing things, because we can't just simply say we'll have an arrangement. There needs to be governmental or otherwise a different arrangement which allows these young people to be progressed in this particular case without delay, because that puts the whole system in peril in terms of for those who are doing adopting, etc., but also those young people in speech and language and other. It's not just speech and language. There are other things involved with that with the Integrated Care Board. They must deliver. So I would say to you, Councillor Chair, that this is not just from the chair; it's from this committee.
Yeah,
it has to be so that it's not seen as the chairperson; it's seen as the whole of us who want to deliver that. And then, if there's an opportunity to speak to other chairs about this, so that there's a unanimous, then that's fine. But this committee needs to highlight the urgency of this, particularly as September is coming and there are children who are unassessed, who cannot progress in their education, and we have a legal duty of care to them to deliver, which is being held back by the internal politics, I suppose, of the Integrated Care Board. And so getting a response to them which says to them, please tell us what the blocks are and how can we help you solve your problems, because we need to work together on it.
I think what's being suggested, if I hear this right, is that the ICB are failing in their statutory duty. They're failing on everything at the moment, as far as I'm concerned, but they're failing in their statutory duty. The bit that we're caring about is our young children. I think what's been suggested on the back of what Kay has done through chasing her channels. I, on behalf of the whole committee, work with Kay on a letter to support and chase the ICB for delivering a statutory service they should be delivering, not at the cost of the council. Am I reading that one right? Yeah.
Just to clarify, so in regards to the statutory responsibilities for fostering and adoption processes, that lies with the local authority. However, we cannot fulfil our statutory responsibilities without the medical advisor element, which is always being delivered through the Integrated Care Board. I must stress that our partners within the Integrated Care Board are trying very hard to manage these situations with us and try to come and seek solution. There are multiple barriers, I think, that have been in the way to enable that. So I think it is important to say we are trying to work very closely in partnership to address the issues, but your support would be most grateful. There is a question at the moment in regards to the funding of that arrangement. So I've made it very clear that whilst the statutory responsibility lies with ourselves, it has to be through a commissioned arrangement through health, because it's a medical advisor, needs to be a paediatrician to be able to have that oversight, not just a paediatrician. Sorry, I've just completely lost my train of thought because I've managed to confuse myself. There was something I was going to say. Sorry, I'm going to pause because I've just completely lost my train of thought. But I think Councillor Liver had a question, didn't you? No.
Our committee happy that, as requested, I sign a letter on behalf of this whole committee, not personally, on behalf of the whole committee, to the ICB. I'll work with Kay on the wording of that letter. Other committees may decide to do their own letters for the ICB's lack of performance. On this particular issue, I'll work with Kay on a letter and sign on behalf of the committee, and we'll build in what Councillor Love mentioned earlier into the same letter sent to the ICB. Yeah.
And sorry, I have just remembered what I was going to say when I lost my train of thought. Just in regards to the funding element, so it has always been funded through the ICB due to corporate parenting responsibilities, because that's a partnership approach. So they're a relevant partner. So it's always been funded in that way.
Is your separate question, or was this related to this issue? Like Councillor Grogan wants to ask a question as well.
Related to this issue, before we go to the vote on it, I think you've touched on it a little bit, but I just wanted some clarity on what the ICB's reason is for only providing the interim arrangement at the moment and not going forward with before we decide to write a letter.
There have been difficulties in identifying a medical advisor with the right skills qualification for availability in the longer term. So I know that there's been inquiry in regards to what that could look like. There's certainly been inquiry across the partnership as well to see if that can be identified. The interim arrangement, is my understanding, is that's through an agency. So it's an agency that can provide those skilled and trained experts. But yeah, it's been availability is my understanding.
Sorry, just a follow-up question.
May?
Sorry, Chair. So for the direction of our letter, if they are trying to do it, but it's the availability that's the issue, what would be the best angle for us to want that interim to be longer?
Try harder.
I think we need a permanent solution, but I think it needs to be prioritised, that there should be no delay in identifying that arrangement, because any delay impacts on children. So that would be my recommendation to committee, that be the basis of that letter.
And also, if you've got a permanent relationship, you can build a relationship with that person rather than interims dipping in and out. You need that relationship for the benefit of our young people. So I will work with Kay on a letter. So Councillor Gavin, the final question is yours.
Yes, I would just like to congratulate you for a very effective service. And I was just wondering what your future aims were for the service. And in addition, I would like to know what you actually give in the way of post-adoption support. And if you can detail this, especially for children with special needs. Thank you.
So our future aims is obviously to continue to develop and be innovative. I don't ever want to be complacent about our recruitment, because although we are doing well, it always worries me what might be around the corner. And I think it's really important that we stay ahead of the game and we really look all the time to be different than other REAs and other VAAs, voluntary agencies, so we can really make sure that we place our children in a very timely way. So probably for me, that's the most important, and that we stay doing things differently and innovative, that we skill our adopters up as well to be able to meet the needs of those children. So certainly, I guess all of our children in some ways have special needs because they're adopted and because, you know, their early life experiences and their trauma means very much that that's what they've experienced. So I think for us, you know, we always have it in the heart of everything we do, that we need to make sure that all of our services are really geared towards making sure we meet their needs. So I guess just to give an example, you know, we our family fun days, we always make sure we think about what would be right for children that have sensory needs, for example, and provide quiet spaces for them. And so just really thinking ahead all the time about what a range of our ages of children and what their needs might be. We've got a multidisciplinary team now, which we're so thankful for, and that's DFE funded at the moment, and we've had another year extended. So we have a clinical psychologist who we just appointed, and we've got 3 assistants who will just work with our children and really just guide us as social workers as well, what we can do. And I guess to give an example, we've introduced something called Digital Stories, which if my adoption support service lead was here, she'll tell it much better than I would, but it's really to work in a digital way so that our young people can tell about how they feel, and we produce that into a little film for them so they can play it back and they can have it on their phones. So I guess those are the sort of things that we're just always thinking about. What else can we do to make sure they can express themselves and we can listen to them, and how they might communicate us in a way that's right for them and that we can understand it.
Okay, I'll move to the recommendation, and the recommendation is that the Children's Services Education and Skills Committee note the Isle of Wight Council's fulfilment of its statutory obligations in securing legal permanence for children who are unable to remain within their birth families, delivered in partnership with Adopt South, the Regional Adoption Agency, and the local authorities' children's social care services. Look for a second of that recommendation, please. Councillor Henry seconds the recommendation. All those in favour? Thank you. And again, Rachel, thank you. Adopt South has been a yeah, do we need, okay, well, we'll add a second recommendation, and we'll note it for the records that the chair of this committee is to write a letter to the ICB asking them to prioritise with urgency a permanent a permanent medical advisor for the Isle of Wight. Is that sufficient? Yeah, so are we just happy with the second round? Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I think it's absolutely spot on that we do that, and I'll work with Kay, get that letter off as soon as we can to the ICB. Thank you. Okay, we move on to our committee work plan, pages 221, 222. I've just added to it at the bottom for the November meeting, year-to-date fostering recruitment data set brief update. Are you happy with that, Mark? I just added to our work plan in November, 20th November, year-to-date fostering recruitment data set brief update. Literally just those 6 numbers. I don't want, you know, if you want to highlight a couple of successes or a couple of things that have worked, just a 1 page, you know, here's the data set. Please, that this strategy, that part of it's worked, you know, whatever you want to add to it, but just a 1 pager would be fine. Okay, happy with that?
Absolutely. Is it okay, Chair, if Mark takes Rachel out? She's got to get a vote.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Are the votes still running? Rachel, thanks, and thanks for coming this evening as well. Much good to see you. Okay. Just remains. I just want to say a couple of thank yous, actually. Thank you to the officers for all your time reports this evening. Thank you to members that have attended committees, because I decided to be cross-party. All the meetings I'm supposed to attend and boards I'm supposed to sit on, I thought it was fair that we shared those boards around. So I know Councillor Love is attending a board for me next week, SEND board, and Councillor Andre has done. Councillor Critchin has also attended some training sessions for me, because there's a lot of boards that we have to sit on. And thank you to the people that have substituted this evening. Councillor Mosdale.
Can you just add to that list of what we need to do is make sure that people who haven't had the procurement training do sign up for it. It's really important now that we're making these decisions that all these committees, councillors understand procurement. It is available.
Final thing on my list was going to be that there is procurement training coming up. I can't remember. Can you remember the date of it? We've all been invited to procurement training, and as we are a decision making, well, we're all effectively 1/9 of a cabinet member. The procurement training that's coming up somewhere next month, I think it's absolutely vital that all councillors do attend that, because every decision we make obviously may have a financial implication to it. And we need to be well aware of, how we do procure and how we run our finances. So thank you very much. Point well made. There's no other comments. I will close the meeting. Thank you, everyone.